You're listening to Keeba-Live. Let's talk with a man with a loud microphone. Here he is, your host and mine, William Lee. Testing. I'm always testing the microphone, and welcome to Keeba-Live. I'm your host, William Lee, and today is the first live show that we're testing. So let's start with let's have a conversation. Today I want to talk about several things, and I want to know what's up America, what's happening to America, where is it going, why are we having all these problems all of a sudden? Well, I concentrate a lot on looking back in history and also what's going on right now with the major media and social media. And I try to get an idea of exactly what is going on. Why is America to the breaking point, which I've never seen in 74 years of my life? I'm talking about things such as, government stepping in to tell you how to raise your children. Or maybe it's just the ideology that open borders are great and that the criminals, they don't have to worry about law and order anymore. Or could it be that people are sick and tired of the election day blues, the months and days that go by, that everybody's all psyched up about the elections, and we hear all these politicians with great promise for solutions to build our country, to take the major problems that one side of the aisle or the other side of the aisle has ignored and said, it doesn't exist, we don't have to worry about it. I'm so sick and tired of it that I'm right up to my ears. But I've noticed in the outside world, people are more scared than ever. Let me give you some examples. First of all, many senior citizens now are scared to go out shopping anymore simply because, it's simple. They worry about being robbed, their car stolen, raped, or murdered. In public parking lots, thievery, car takeovers, car thefts, it just are unbelievable. And yet our legal system has turned around and basically handcuffed our police officers and closed the doors of the courthouse. It's really something when you sit down and think about it. 10 years ago, we didn't have this. Even 5 years ago, come think about it, we didn't have as much violence as we have today. Every morning there's more shootings in different towns throughout the United States. Younger people being shot down, gangs open fire into public areas and parking lots, killing innocent bystanders, end up being the victims of gun violence. Oh, okay. Then let's talk about gun violence for a moment then. Maybe that's where we're going wrong. Now, the politicians in the Democratic Party, which I believe 10% of them are under Joe Biden, and George and Hunter and, the whole Biden gang, for instance, have decided that Joe should take care of this. We are going to get rid of those assault weapons. We're going to get rid of those massive, large guns that are for military use only, which we should, by the way. We're going to make tougher background checks. It's going to take a couple of extra days and more scrutinizing and more difficult questions on our background tests to make sure that when we fill out for a gun permit, that we are actual mentally capable and trained to use and house firearms. We want to make sure that everybody in America locks up their gun in a gun box. We found that there's a lot of problems with children getting a hold of daddy's gun and going out and shooting people. We found that a lot of these shootings in the schools now that are really categorized, and people have looked at them and said, okay, this is the reasons why. We come back to the understanding that, first of all, it was easy for the young man or woman in this particular case, or child, who has been victimized or bullied at school, who has been beat up or forced into situations at school that they can no longer tolerate. So the first thing they do is they go onto social media, which we'll discuss in a couple of minutes, and what we do there is we type out, I'm so mad, and this is my picture of my gun, Johnny's going to get it when I go to school tomorrow. And then all of a sudden, nobody pays attention to what's on social media, including the parents of children, and we have Columbine, or we have some of the other horrible school shootings. But let's not limit it just down to juveniles shooting each other. Let's go up to gangs that are infiltrating our cities throughout the United States, where one side of the gang war, as I call it, and the other side and or gang function, which is not at war but trespass on the property of those that are on a war alert, are gunned down. These cowards usually use the idea that, well, you come in our territory, one or two of you, and we're going to shoot both of them. You come and try to do dealings for drug sales, we're going to shoot you. It's kind of like the cartel theory, by intimidation, fear, and just downright what I would call a disease that they force upon their victims to carry out the crimes that they insist upon. And when they don't, then we must retaliate, either by going through, as the low-life scum gang leaders do, get juveniles get all fired up. Well, you're going to be a member of the gang now, and what you got to do is go out there and shoot that guy. He's a bad guy. He's not a family member here in this gang. So you got to prove to us that you're a family member. You got to load up that gun. You got to get out there and, with our boys, shoot them down. Or the cartels that simply do it this way. Oh, so you stole from us? We chop off a hand. If you stole more from us, we kill your family. If it really gets out of control, we cut off your head and send it to your mother. This is horrible violence, and it is unbelievable. It is now forcing our senior citizens to be scared to death. It is forcing law-abiding citizens, hard-working, middle-class people, to be scared to death in for fear that they're going to get hurt. Well, now how did this all really, I guess, boil over in the last few years? Well, I think that's very simple. I think it started with what we call the border. Now, I'm not against people from other countries that are afraid for their life to come into our country and get political asylum. But they have to do it legally. What I'm upset about is that our wonderful administration, the administration that is going to take care of the working class individual and beat back the big billionaires and millionaires and corporations that are strangling the middle class. I just love his theory about we're just going to open the borders and let them all come in. No, that Trump in back, oh my goodness. How did he do it? Why did he let these people be locked out of this wonderful country while I and the rest of the Democrats, and I want to say something, by the way, in a primacy on this, the rest of the Democrats. Here's something I want to say. I'm only talking about the 10% of loose guns in the Democratic Party who have now taken the majority of control over. There's a lot of good Democrats and a lot of good politicians that are Republican or Democrats. But, you know, in every group, you're going to find a percentage that just can't play the game unless they are the leaders. And right now, the Democrats have I guess, a community of these nitwits that have lost control. You know, we voted them in because we're their actual bosses. You know that? Yeah. Stop and think about it. When you go to vote for somebody, you're voting for them because you want leadership material. Okay? You're casting your vote. You, sir, now work for me. When I need something or need to be heard, you are there to listen and to teach us what we can and can't do, and then take our ideas to the government officials to get bills written or get things changed in this country. It isn't a situation whereas once they are elected, they have the right to come in, fill their pockets full of money, totally ignore us, which I think the Biden family has done by filling their pockets full of, oh, wait, that's right, the missing diamonds from China. I forgot about that. I Didn't forget about the $10 to $25 million that's flooded through. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, that's right. Hunter Biden was under the influence of drugs. I'm so sorry. I forgot about these things before starting this. But I really do believe that that's where it starts. And then the president's idea of just letting them all come in. Well, look at what great results we've had so far. The states that have said, we're going to extend our arms out and give them a helping hand, I can't say illegitimate morons that are coming across the border because they're not morons. I can't say they're illegitimate children because they could be or couldn't be. But they're illegals, every one of them. And the majority of them are usually set up by the cartels who do what? Push trafficking. That's a big moneymaker for him. Fentanyl. Ooh, number one on the list. And, of course, the last but not least, just plain, I would say, control of the drug market. Now, if you combine these three together, you're looking at billions of dollars of American money going south of the border to cartels that are, well, if I'm lucky to say, very wealthy. And if we keep our fingers crossed, each cartel will try to kill the other one off to get that business, that control of the border situation so that they can have more and more individuals peddling their goods and moving them into the United States. It's wonderful, isn't it? And the cartels have no concern for human life. That's obvious by what they do. But now it's to the point whereas somewhere in the seed of America, we have a problem. George Soros is I believe, founder of that problem. He's made it very clear that he's out to destroy America. So how does he approach this? Well, isn't it interesting that most of the prosecutors that he has supported during their time to be elected into offices, putting up campaign money, of course, would absolutely go along with this idea that, like the cases that are coming up now with an illegal individual raping a 14-year-old girl, throw him in jail but turn him loose with no bail because the prosecutor, this is a fair thing to do. We're not going to deport them. We're just going to slap their hands and keep track of them, and they'll come back. They'll come back someday or whatever, but they'll become good citizens. A little rape or a murder such as that young lady in Georgia or some of the other problems that have happened, I mean, that's understandable. Now, if Mr. Soros is correct, he can destroy the court system. If we destroy the court system, we destroy the competency of the American voters. If we destroy the voters, then we can infiltrate with our other ideas. And I'm certain that Soros, hopefully when he dies and goes to hell, which is where he belongs, he doesn't just poof and blow up in a flame. I hope that he stays burning forever. What he's doing to America because of his ideology or maybe his misconception of being a human being could be a demon from Satan. We don't know. Kind of looks that way though, doesn't it? Well, while he's out there playing his games, the illegals are coming across the border and changes in our social and sexual identity lives are changing with trans and the problem with the sports industry, arguing about females that are actually males but are transed over, why they should be allowed to compete, why we're taking Title IX, for instance, that's over probably 50 years old, that protects women so they have their rights to compete with men. Not trans women. I'm talking about women, and how this is affecting our society today. And then we get down to the children. Great. Schools are doing a wonderful job in education. Our country, education-wise, has fallen to an all-time low. We're so busy building, the complete safe, secure environment of being smarter than the parent, for instance, of safety, and then of the factor that we know more than a parent knows, gives us the opportunity to go ahead and if, for instance, here's a good example, maybe Johnny comes to school and he's 9 years old or 5 years old or somewhere in that area, and he's acting more girlish and a little more feminine than men as a man. And maybe the counselor picks this up and says, oh, my goodness, Johnny, you might be a Joanne. And I can see your parents are not jumping in here and doing anything. And, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you help. And we're going to guide you through how you can, especially in the state of Washington, actually at the age of 13, I understand the bill is stating that you can run away from home, for Pete's sake, yeah. And we'll find you the resources, we'll find you the what you need as far as making this life change decision. Then we'll help you massacre your body and ruin your mind. And in the long run, you'll be so thankful because, well, you'll have your own sexual identity. And, of course, it comes along with a wonderful word, pronouns. Oh, yeah, improper use of pronouns is a court case not too long ago by the Cox family, who actually had their child taken away from them because they would not recognize a boy child as a girl and misused improper pronouns. And the government stepped in because the child needed to be put into an environment that respected his wishes. Wow, isn't that pretty cool? A government taking over to help us out parenting. Well, now we got the government taking control of the children. We have them bringing in criminals, illegals. Now we have the situation of economic control by different organizations that are out to bust our economic growth. Now, I know the president said that Bidenomics are going strong. They're whipping out of sight, and they're changing the way we think in America. Sure it is. Mortgage interest, has gone sky high and continuing to climb, so that takes the American dream of being able to buy a home and destroys it practically. The idea that you can feed your family and really feed them good. Nowadays, when you go to the grocery store, you'll find that there's 14 to 16% increase in food. But bottom line of this whole thing is it's not what's happening. It's just a growth curve, you see. And our leaders are convinced that this growth curve is built on the factor that Bidenomics will taper off. As we keep growing, as it keeps going, it'll taper off. I don't think so, folks. In March 11th is coming up, and that'll be exciting. A lot of people don't know that March 11th, they have a new deal. Now, there was a lot of people that are supposedly in business, 80 million of them that count in America today, that have sub-jobs, or they're jobbers, or they're working with different types of contracts with different companies. To give you an idea, Lyft is one of them. Of course, it's based in Europe, but it is an American organization, just like some of the other companies that deliver food and different projects, some of the construction companies that hire subcons to work with them in different projects, etc. That's extra money for some of 80 million Americans who are trying to survive. Now, the situation is that wait a minute. Big Joe, I'm sorry for studying and trying to do an impersonation, I apologize, has come up with the idea now that he'll spend a considerable amount of taxpayers' dollars. We will hire 30,000 more IRS agents because they feel that there are so many of these jobbers out there that are not playing fair with the IRS. They're not paying what their dues are. The taxes, I guess you'd call them. I think that the Democrats call them dues. But the taxes that are responsible that they must pay because, well, some companies are hiding them, and the list of things goes on. This gives an opportunity for the IRS to strike down and hunt these people out and make sure that they're running illegally legal. Now you say, what, Bill? Legally illegal? Legally? Well, that's double talk. No, that's what I thought it was too at first, but then I listened to one of the columnists from Fox News explain it as a point of, well, they're legal and have been for years, but now as of March 12th, they'll be illegal. It's as simple as that, because the IRS will naturally, once they get their mitts on you, the first thing they got to do is make sure that you're fined and that your, background and all the filings from 5 to 6 years back are correct, or you'll have to readjust those and pay fines, of course, plus the extra tax that you owe that just slipped through somebody's fingers. Now then, 80 million Americans. That's going to take them, and that's an estimate, by the way, that's going to take them a little while to do, don't you think? 80 million Americans. Wow. I can imagine that department, the IRS department, when the president arrives there to say hello or to talk to him, will be kind of like, yeah, something from the Tales of the Crypt or something. Because it seems to me that if we are to build the economy, we should be working on building businesses, right? We should be able to, as a government, give a helping hand up to small businesses through financing, etc., to build American-based companies. But as of March 11th, I believe, and a lot of the people that are speculating right now, it's going to force more companies to go overseas and operate over there, and then be able to conduct their business in this country, avoiding some of the pitfalls that American business is falling into. Lack of finances, because I understand the business loan situation will end also March 11th, that the government will not be able to, sit down and actually talk with you and try to help you out. It'll be more like the office door is closed. That will force a lot of the independent businesses and the entrepreneurs in this country to walk the other way. What else are they going to do? It's as simple as that. So the Democrats are working, I should say, the liberal end of the Democrats, that small group that's taken the majority now of the Democratic votes. I get choked up when I think about them. And are working on destroying America right now. It's kind of interesting. So let's go back also to one other major point. Now, I've covered the fact that senior citizens are scared to death because of crime. I've talked about crime. I've talked about how crime has started in this country. I'm talking about how the government's taking over through schools and now taking our children. The state of Washington, as I mentioned before, has that wonderful bill that at 13 you can walk away from your parents. The parents then have no rights. They don't have a right to talk to you. The state can hide them or do whatever they want, and the parents have no further say-so. Okay? So now also the Bidenomics, besides losing your children, will cut you off if you're an entrepreneur or a small businessman. Okay, we're going to eliminate that business financing. Okay, get rid of that. And last but not least, with Bidenomics and the leaders of the Democratic Party, we're going to continue to have the interest rate climb and climb, taking everybody out of the opportunity of their dream of owning a home, because it just won't be practical. When you stop and think about it right now, an average family, hopefully in the state of Washington, I'll use the state here as an example. We know for a fact that the normal income that you have to make to survive, this is what the university people that are very bright say, to actually survive, you've got to have at least $69,000 income per month. That's to keep you in your home, pay the bills, and hopefully buy enough food, take care of the wonderful medical program, the Obamacare program, which is, as far as I'm concerned, the biggest mistake we've made yet. And I won't even start on how that treats people now and how corporations have taken over medical. But you never hear the Democrats talk about that, by the way. Never a word. Isn't that interesting? So we'll talk about that on one of the other podcasts, late night shows that we'll be doing on keeba-live. It is also impressive to me to think that the Democrats under the leadership, and let's look at for a second the leadership I'm referring to, and that's the top two, Harris and Biden. Biden needed a stand-up. You know, he's a straight guy. He needed somebody to be the comedian, and I think Harris has done a wonderful job of that. If she can't laugh at her own jokes or sit there and make illogical sentences sound logical to somebody with a IQ of a 3-year-old, things just aren't rocking and rolling in her mind or her world. And the thought of her as president of the United States, really, truly, if something should happen to Big Joe, maybe he'll forget to come to work one day, or he'll forget where the White House is. It would make people like Putin and that fat demon in Korea who thinks that he needs to blow up everything with his big bombs. It'll be interesting to see how that all works out. Now, the other thing that's kind of interesting that you've got to look at, of course, with all this leadership that we have, don't you think China is looking at us saying, I don't think we need to go in there with guns and missiles. I think their leadership corps will invite us in. Because we know right away that, for instance, to give you an example of how great I think Biden is doing, especially with the border where people from China are now showing up, by the way. Well, they can't get into Texas because Texas decided to be what America should be, forced them into California, where we know the governor in California and all the great legislators and leaders from California have come from. We know their track records. So what we've got now is China sitting back thinking, hey, this is pretty good. Now, we get rid of some citizens, quite a few of them, by the way, and we have TikTok so we can spy on what's going on social media through the U.S. and cover it up because of trickery, as far as I'm concerned, on business when they were told by the President of the United States before he left office that he was going to shut them down and send them home crying. And when he had them on the ropes, time ran out, unfortunately, and Big Joe came in and said, oh, no, we can't do that. Can't do that. It's Chinese. Got to have friends with the Chinese. Of course they got to be friends with the Chinese. The Joe, proud leader of the pack of, the Biden empire, wouldn't want the Chinese to be upset because Hunter wouldn't be making big bucks and diamonds wouldn't be disappearing. And you know the story there. Well, then when we look at the border crisis also along this line and ask Big Joe, why can't you just sign the bill and back up, put in those laws back that Trump had? Oh, that Trump, he's no good. Rotten lion, SOB's going to ruin America. And anyway, the president in Mexico and I have talked, and he doesn't want that stay-home law put back in effect to close up the border. Oh, isn't that interesting? Doesn't want that law. When you stop and think of it, I think an average human being at the age of probably 15 to 16 that studies a little bit of politics could pretty well figure this out without much effort at all of what's going wrong in this country. But if we keep this up, mark my words, we're not going to have much left. 2024 is going to be the year of reckoning. Now, I said, and I'll quote myself, last presidential election that we had, which was Trump and Big Joe, the man who's been leading this country from the back seat of his limousine for the last 40 years. Before that election started, I said, bingo. We are going to see the worst election in the history of the United States. And I've got to apologize to everybody listening out there if they heard me say that, because believe it or not, I believe that 2024 will be the worst in the history of this country. A country that's being torn to pieces by the leaders within the government of our country. This is phenomenal, isn't it? How could we start a country with just a handful of politicians back in the 1700s that built the strongest constitution, built the strongest political system, judicial system in the world, and made this country number one within 300 years? How in the world could we allow such famous people as Khrushchev, who said in 1963 as he ripped his shoe off, pounded on the podium, we won't raise the flag, the communistic flag over your country. We believe you'll raise it yourself. And that's what we're doing, folks. Slowly, we've taken down Old Glory, the most beautifulest flag in the world, a flag that shows countries that were united and people who gave their lives to defend our freedoms, the freedom of choice, the freedom of being able to speak like I am tonight, the freedoms that make our country the greatest in the world. How and why we're lowering that flag down and getting ready to put up a communistic flag that Putin would love to see. He'd have that on his Christmas cards, I'm sure. I don't know why. Why are we doing it? Because we've allowed people like George Soros to destroy us. We've allowed big money interest to buy and sell our politicians like used cars on a, economy car lot. Doesn't make any sense, does it? And here's another sad part that you and I have to think about. The kids right now that are being affected about this, some of them too young to realize, others of them getting to the age where they do realize what's going on. They're our future leaders for tomorrow. And what we're doing to them today and what the outside world is doing leaves very little hope for them to actually be able to keep our country safe and strong. Now, I don't want everybody to come back and say, my goodness, you spent 32 minutes and 21 seconds on doomsday stuff. But I want to express something to you to show you even easier about some of my points and make them, shall we say, stand out in your minds just in simple factors. One of them being the homeless. You know, we're letting in, what is it now, 10, 11 million illegals are coming into our country. Maybe some of them are not illegal, but as far as I'm concerned, they're illegal when they come in the way they are entering our country. But yet we look at Seattle, we look at San Francisco, California. You want me to go on with the list? Look at your own hometown. Look at when you drive down the street, there's a tent and a family living in a parking lot. Look at over here, this park that used to be public is now taken over by an encampment. And inside that encampment are homeless individuals. They're homeless, some of them, in a smaller percentage, because they've lost their homes or been thrown out because, economics just didn't work for them. Some of them are just American gypsies that decided that they want to be able to do drugs, drink, and whatever else they want to do without having any responsibility or care for the law enforcement or for our communities as far as that goes. So they'll move around like gypsies. I hate to say that, the word gypsy, because I know that there was a culture back many years ago, and I believe that they were probably better off than those that are now in their broken down campers, camping alongside the streets in Seattle, taking the old 5-gallon bucket out with the toilet seat and sitting down there and then leaving the feces on the street, or urinating in the streets, or just plain throwing trash out. Or how about those that got the shopping carts? You see them all the time, I'm sure, in some cities. They're loaded up with all their belongings. And the shopping cart, of course, was stolen from the local grocery store, which, again, takes us around the tree to find out that when stores lose their shopping carts, when merchandise walks out the door without being paid for, what do you think happens next? Let me give you a clue. The price tags are ripped off and a new tag is put on at a percentage higher to cover the losses. It's wrong, folks. It is absolutely wrong. And what really burns me about the homeless situation, because, we're letting all these illegals in, so we go ahead and take the opportunity to feed them, give them a card with money on it, and in some cases we're putting them up in hotels, really nice hotels, until they can find some other place to ship them off to, Chicago, New York, all these wonderful cities now that are crying, oh my God, we can't spend any more money. We're tapped out because you've shipped all these illegals to our communities that we know we want to reach out and help them. But now businesses are being robbed. Police officers are being beaten in the streets. Murder is going on. Our children are threatened, raped, and robbed, and murdered, and mutilated by illegals. The ones that we're supporting and making sure they have a roof over their head where it's dry and halfway comfortable for them to spend time while we figure out what we do with them. But meanwhile, back in the streets, what do you think the homeless must think as they look in the window and say, hey, look at that. Look at that. They got McDonald's delivered to them. Or, holy smokes, they're indoors and it's 31 degrees or 28 degrees out here. And here we stand staring in. And we're American citizens. We didn't come in here illegally. We live here. Our families were living here. Yes, at one time, the United States grew from the factor of all the other countries migrating in. I mean, let's face it. We are not the original inhabitants of this ground called America. No. The American Indian and the different tribes. And I think you're going to find that some of the Latino-based individuals that migrated back hundreds of years ago were here too. So what does this all mean? Well, it means to me that, number one, our initiative and ideas of how we're going to save the world through the Democratic Party is so warped, it's failing. And it's failing fast. Now, we've got the Republicans arguing that we're not going to do anything because we don't like the Democrats, what they're doing. Okay, great. Why not compromise? Why not have a conversation? Why not sit down at a table like they did back in the 1700s when they built this country and get things working like it should? Now, a lot of people say, well, 1700, and let me tell you something. Go back and look in history if the schools haven't taken the history books off the shelf and changed it. Go back and look at it because I think you're going to find that while this country was growing, there was political disbelief on both sides of the aisles. There were the Whig Party, I believe. There was different parties, and there was arguments going on, but they had conversations, great debates. They got together and worked things out for the betterment of this country and the people in it. We don't do that now. No. We have the Democrats telling us how we're going to live, and we have the Republicans telling us how we shouldn't live, and then we have the high industrial billionaires who are walking around saying, well, that's a great idea as long as he leaves me alone. Oh, that's fine. Well, I don't agree with him, so I'll take my billions and move it over here, and I'll do something entirely different because they've got the money to do so. In fact, I'm sure Musk and Jeff there, the main man of Amazon, and some of the others, that are racing to go to the moon, probably the reason being is that they're sick and tired of graffiti on all the buildings, businesses failing in this country, outsourcing has gone wild. We support China. What would happen if we decide not to buy half the stuff that we buy today electronically or other components? Let's say we quit buying them. China would go into bankruptcy. But we can't because we have nobody over here that manufactures it because Bidenomics, makes it really a tax structure and a situation where big companies are smart enough to pull out quick and now and outsource. It's far better. And let's take a moment to talk about, what else? Social media. Now, we've covered the homeless, because of the fear of what the homeless go through. We've talked about the different cultures. We might have skipped over the fentanyl situation with homeless and the fact that now, like Portland, Oregon, which was a beautiful city, is now graffitied up. Businesses are moving out, boarding up their company stores and getting out because their employees can't come to work and be safe. Their customers can't get in the store without being safe. And when people do get into their businesses or stores, they're being ripped off constantly. And, of course, thanks to Big Soros, the prosecutors in many different cities that he paid for and owned, by the way, make sure that they're not incarcerated. They're just hand-slapped and moved on, which is very convenient. I wonder why. I wonder why that would happen. But that, too, is what's tearing apart America. When we let these individuals, and if you think George Soros is a Democrat, forget it. He is not. He is a one-man destruction crew. He's going to destroy America because he thinks that he is, well, I don't think he thinks it. I think Satan had an illegitimate son, and Soros, well, just arrived in America just at the wrong time. That's what I think. But to make Daddy take him back into hell, he's got to make sure he destroys anything that God has put together. So now that we are doing all this stuff, and everybody's got their thumbs in the pie, the Republicans, the Democrats, etc., since there's no conversation going on, since we have homeless on the streets, law and order is going down slowly, we have senior citizens and businesses that are scared to death to open their doors, and senior citizens that are scared to death to shop at those businesses, what do we got left in America? We have children that, unfortunately, have to take this mess and clean it up one way or another. That's right. Kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids, if you're lucky enough to be at my age and have great-grandchildren. What are we giving them? Are we giving them the dream to build a business? No, because, we got economic problems there and taxation without representation. Are we giving them the dream to own a home? Well, not really, because as I mentioned before, the amount of money that you have to have, and currently with the interest rate, which will probably hit 7% before long, which entitles you to have 20% down and an annual income of $108,000 or better in the state of Washington, that should really affect us. That should do a great job on us. So we take that dream away. Then we take the dream away of having a family, like in China, because they're so upset. They have too many people in China. So girls that are born, chances of survival are far less than children that families have boys. Now, boys are in better shape. Of course, they have told all the Chinese, you will have 2 children maximum. After that, I don't know what happens, and I don't care to know. But this is all scare to me, fear to me, illogic to me, and a situation that I believe is coming to America. If we don't start saying to our politicians calmly, you either talk to us, you either listen to us, and you either look at the rights and move in the directions that we voted you for leadership to do so, we're going to give you a one-way ticket home when it's time to vote again. The second thing we've got to do is get our younger generation, which right now would be the ages between 16 and 25, to wake up and vote. It's the most disgusting thing in the world that I can think of in America is when you point at the flag and you ask a 16 or 17-year-old, what do the red stripes mean on the flag? Now, just one item on the flag. What do the red stripes mean on the American flag? And they have no idea. Or one part that even really should upset you, besides the lack of education, because we're not letting anybody slip through the cracks, we're letting students that need help, we give them a little help and they're going to snap out of it, and we'll just move them on because the state, for every chair that's filled pays us X number of dollars for education. Who needs to educate them if we got the chairs full? We take all the books out of the library because they might have something to say about World War II. Hitler doesn't exist. There was no Holocaust. We bent history. We are changing everything to lifestyles. We to the point now where we. I'm sorry, Harry. I didn't know that. I forgot that your pronoun is not this. I'm so sorry. Oh, and that we choked to death because we don't have the right pronoun for individuals. What is the sense of all this? And really, I think you're going to find that there is no sense for all of this. It's a deterioration that George Soros and others in this country that want to destroy this country are enjoying. And as long as the Democrats have got their heads in a bucket of I don't know what and are not paying attention to us and are running the things that they feel that is in their book the correct way, and then turning around and standing behind a pulpit with two great big microphones in churches telling us how great we are, or standing behind on a stage and saying to us, oh, this is what we're going to do, and this is how great we are. And when you compare the stories that keep coming out, each one of them seems to be a little different. And when you stop and analyze one thing and one thing only, you can take what I call a human picture of what a lie looks like. Because when they are in a church, it's one story. Whether they're in a business behind a speaker stand, it's a different story. When they're in your neighborhood, rah, come on, we got to vote for me. It's another story of solutions, of problems, and how they're so wonderful and how they have taken the economy, put it in their two hands, and weighed it out, and then reached out with these solutions to the families, to build those families, the middle-class American family, to pick them up and show them that we can rebuild America to make it as great as it was. One stops and thinks, well, first of all, how do you do that on a lie? The second thing you think about, wait a minute, America before you got here was in better shape, a lot better shape. And the third, of course, where's all the money going? And if we're making all these programs and hiring IRS people to examine our financial futures and destroy our workforce, who's paying for that? And where did that money come out of? I'm sure that the Biden family, Big Joe, and his brother, and of course, number one perfect son, who remember now was under the influence of drugs when he sold all these favors to foreign countries that want to do us in for simple $3-4 million a year, selling the brand, which we are going to find out shortly is the President of the United States. And finally, let's take a look at this. Our vice president, if she takes over because something happens to our president, I suggest, even though Canada's having problems, we all go to Canada immediately, because the laughing girl of politics, I don't care what her education is. Every time I've seen her on television, her statements and the laughing and the BS is sickening. If I was a woman, I'd be so discouraged, because all these years women have fought for rights to advance themselves, and then have a vice president, a woman vice president, who is supposed to be in charge of the border, which I don't know if she ever was down there. Joe only went a couple of times. I don't know if she even knows what the border's about. How can you have somebody like that take over the country? Unless, of course, Mr. Putin is standing in the wings saying, okay, go ahead, Harris, get out there, take over, because Joe mentally can't do it anymore. Or Joe forgot, went to the restroom, went out the door, and disappeared. Is his mental competency a thing that America should be worried about? Oh, you betcha. Because the foreign countries throughout this world are looking at him saying, how in the world can he run the most powerful, the biggest, the best country, the United States, in the world, and not know, turn up the teleprompter, will you? It's out of focus. How can that be? They probably wonder. But then they sit down at their big desks, these communistic people and the big leaders of the Communistic Party, and say, well, it won't be long now. We should be able to move in any day now. As far as the wars are going overseas, the Ukrainians, we want to fight and help the Ukrainians. They suffer. The people in Israel are suffering. Whenever you take and start a war, both sides, the human people, are suffering. It's not a political suffering. You don't see the big, massive leaders that started this mess with 55 million guards around them in a, bomb-proof bunker somewhere with piles of money stacked around them. You don't see them worried. They're not being shot at. But average, good people that God put on this earth, they're being mowed down and killed. Children are being raped, mutilized, murdered. It's not right, folks. It's not even close to what it should be. But America doesn't seem to have that problem at the moment, and with God willing, we won't ever have that problem. But what we're going to have to do first is, number one, as I said, get the kids, the younger generation, to understand how important it is to vote. Number two, to get the rest of the middle class voters to wake up also and get those numbers up at the polls, because we need the numbers up. Number three in the list of things that we should be doing, and I'm skipping over number two for a second. Number three is very important. We need to start being a family and raising our children and letting the parents handle raising children and tell the government, you're not in our bedroom and you're damn well not going to be raising my children and taking them away from me. We got to get back to that, and we've got to do it soon. Now, number two, it's a very simple solution. Got to start a conversation. The most important thing out of everything that built America was the fact that the conversation was there. It might have been a conversation that started kind of, well, you can do this, but I disagree with that. But it was a conversation that when the leaders got together and ironed out their indifferences on a basis of building a foundation that built this country, it went together pretty well. It gave us all the opportunity to be able each night to thank the good Lord because we have freedom of speech. Thank the good Lord that our families are well and we have the capabilities of protecting our families. And last but not least, to be very proud of what our families can accomplish and thank the good Lord that we are blessed in this country. Now, I know the Democrats, liberal Democrats, the left-wingers might think that, well, God's just, a figurehead. He's not a leader. But I'll tell you something. I think that when the time comes and all of us cross over the bridge, the leaders of this country will be crossing over to answering some very important and interesting questions. And let us hope that they are forgiven. Let us hope that they move on, but somewhere that won't affect the rest of us. America can and will come back, but it's going to take us fighting the stupidity, the what I call left-wingers that want to destroy this country, to fight those injustice and open our courtrooms back again so that law can be regulated and practiced and decisions can be made to save and protect our communities from crime. Let us hope we can put all this together. Together, America can grow again. 2024 will be the world watching us to find out how that vote goes. And I'm sure they'll be wondering what happens if all of a sudden the wrong side wins the election. I hope that this conversation has at least started some conversation in your mind and thoughts are coming through. And I'm not interested in being a warmonger. I'm not jumping on here and yelling and screaming. I'm just trying to explain how I feel and how I look at things and how I feel that if all of us get together and open our eyes and start protecting our senior citizens and start demanding our rights as American citizens again, I think it'll be a great place to live because it will be the most powerful, safest, and freedoms for all that want to actually look and believe in a government and in a real, I consider, a land that is for the dreamers, the people that have done so many things with the ideology that they could dream about building businesses. Ford, for instance, and the Ford motor car, just as one of example. There's thousands of examples out there that what this country gave the basic tools for those that came from Europe and came to this country legally, built their businesses, built their homes, cherished their families, had religious rights and freedom of religion without being prosecuted and harassed. It's unbelievable when you stop and think about it. Tonight is the first of these particular shows we'll be doing. It is live. It is unscripted. You can probably tell that. And it's done by a gentleman, that's me, who is looking at 75 years on this earth. Isn't that amazing? 75 years. And it's been great. It really has. And I want to make sure that the next 75 years even is better for everybody in America. So if you're interested in seeing what's going on or listening to some podcasts, I got a suggestion. Check the keepasmiling.com page that we're building. We're going to have some merchandise on there. We're going to have some other shows and opportunities. We've got special guests coming on board. The Disruptors Podcast Network has been on the air on iHeartRadio for the last 7 years, and we've had several different shows from the LUDAC, which is American-born citizens that are Latinos, and a very big organization. We're very proud to be affiliated with them. We are really excited about the fact of our affiliations with different hometown heroes that we have here in the state of Washington. We have different ideas, of course, and all of us have different thoughts on how America should be. So what we try to do on the Disruptors Podcast Network is, first of all, build a network that's family-friendly. You won't find Joe Rogan on our network. Or I should say not Joe Rogan, because he has the right to do what he's doing, and he's done very well. You will not find Howard Stearns on our network. In the I guess I should back this up. You won't find them in their vocabulary or in their just shock jock type DJ stuff that they pull. We are a family orientated, as I mentioned before, and we want to make sure that even kids can listen to what's being said. We don't have I guess you would say a language shortage. That means only words that have 4 letters are used on our programming. We do not show bias. We are not believers that you have to see colors in different individuals, discriminate, etc. Are we rather tough on homosexuals, LBGYN, or whatever their wonderful name is this week, or transsexuals that have transed over? I think there's a lot of things that you should understand that they don't understand. They have the same rights you and I have. They've made up their minds that they want to become some other because of sexual identity. That's fine. And if they want to do so and they have the mental capability to make these decisions, then you won't hear us badmouth them on this show. But when they take children under the age of 18, because that's where maturity comes in, and put them into a market of wholesale medicines and life changes and physical changes that are made before they even have the maturity to become a real active person, then you're going to hear some grumpiness on this show. The other thing that I want to make very clear, as long as people do not force their views or lifestyles and trespass on us as Americans, and I hope that I'm speaking for those that feel the same as I do, then I'm not interested in trespassing on them. If that lifestyle is what they want and they respect what we feel is right and want, then there is no problem. There is no reason to throw rocks at each other whatsoever. And we won't do that on the Disruptors Podcast Network. That's where we're at. So you can find us on iHeartRadio. Check us out, keeba-live. We're on iHeartRadio, Spotify. We're on 11 different platforms. And I think that you'll get an idea of what's going on as far as what our thinking is and how we bring what I concern good facts to good people. And let's close this show with what I close most of my podcasts with. First of all, you can get a hold of me, by the way, at Keeba, that's Keeba Agency, if you want to comment on our show. I got a comment the other day. It said, "Why do you do this? You're boring us to death. Nobody listens over 2 seconds." Well, okay. If they don't, then they don't have to. But if you'd like to talk to us about an idea, if you'd like to come on the show, I'm interested in talking with you. I don't care if your viewpoint isn't the same as mine. Every viewpoint has 2 sides. Let's bring them to the table and let's have a conversation. Until we meet again, keep an open heart for giving your neighbors and friends a helping hand up, and clear mind and a view of positivity on how to build America in your mind. And remember, folks, you'll always keep us smiling.